Hi, everyone. We are so excited today to have Milli Gradl with us. She is a transformational coach and mentor, and we are very lucky to have you today. She's had her practice for 2 years in Sea Point, and she did an 18-month course with her coach and mentor, Peter King, which a lot of people heard great things about him, in Hout Bay in Cape Town in 2019. And what was it called? Making Lives Work, a program of life and personal growth coaching, which is amazing. That's quite a course. I've heard wonderful things about it. So I'm going to hand over to you now to let us know a bit more about yourself.
Okay, hi everybody. I am so happy to be here. I feel so grateful that Kat had me join today and so excited to share this conversation. So my name is Milli. I got into coaching, I did the course 5 years ago, and it's just ever since doing the coaching course, I did it actually for my own personal growth, but what came from it was that I actually landed up finding my purpose, which was to become a coach myself, and the journey towards the last 2 years of my life has been exactly that. And I opened my practice, as I say, a year and a half ago. I work from home in a beautiful space, and it's been so wonderful transforming my clients and going along with them on the journey that I had been on a couple of years before that. And I'm excited for my future and what's going to be coming from this, and the continuation of the process and the journey.
Amazing. So we'll find out more about what the future holds with your practice. I'll ask about that shortly, but first of all, we'll jump into the first question, which is more about how you've touched on it now, but a little bit more about how you came to be, how this practice came to be.
Okay, so how my practice came to be. First and foremost, I have been in a 26-year relationship myself. I got together with my partner when I was 14 years old. I'm now 40 years old. So the embodiment and commitment to my own relationship and living in this relationship has taught me so much more, pretty much, I would think, than anything else ever really could have. The true experience of being in a relationship from the age of 14 and going all the way through and actually dealing with real life things like conflict resolution, difficult days, navigating the real changes that happen within a relationship and occur over the years that you spend together, rebuilding our relationship, especially after becoming parents. I am a mom of two. I've got a 13-year-old son and an 11-year-old daughter, and obviously the navigation of that, going from being just the two of us for all those years and used to just being the two of us and then becoming parents, that was quite a navigation and a learning and a growth in itself. And then involving intimacy and what that looks like firsthand. Getting completely honest with myself about this or on this journey has given me insight and perspective into helping others navigate this as well. So that would be, I would say, the very first thing closest to my heart. The reason I chose to get into this. Secondly, the last 10 years have been an intense journey of self-discovery for me. Building a relationship with myself has been probably one of the hardest but most rewarding things I think I've ever done. And the more I've worked on myself, the more I've realized my relationship has improved. My relationship with myself, my relationship with my husband, as well as with my family. It's just been an ongoing journey that, of discovery and reward, really. Thirdly, which is and was a sensitive topic for me, but I do believe needs to be spoken about more and more. At the age of 30, which was about 10 years ago, I found myself having to accept the loss and the truth that the family I had come from no longer was the picture perfect family, and the idea of a husband and wife, getting married, having children, and sort of riding off into the sunset together was no longer the reality for me when my parents, after 40 years together, decided to get a divorce. This most definitely pulled a rug out from underneath me, and the reference point that had been taken from me, it was almost now time for me to become my own reference point. And it was almost as though you're stepping into this completely unfamiliar territory. And you would think that at the age of 30 you would sort of just almost slide through it. And it's not, it wasn't my divorce, it was theirs. But the idea that we carry in our minds of a picture perfect, way in which things sort of happen almost became, the truth of it really, and the reality that it doesn't always look like that became quite true. And I realized it was time for me to rewrite and create a relationship with myself and my partner to change the narrative of this. And little did I know where it would lead me. Open and afraid, I began the journey of asking for help. And that led me to the course I discovered. And that was obviously with Peter and Kerry King in Hout Bay, Making Lives Work. I did this course and I began the journey not only back to myself, but to the purpose which had always been about helping others face their truths, answering questions I had avoided for so long. And I had to get clear on who I am and what I wanted and what it was going to look like for me and the necessary steps I needed to take in order for my story to look different. It became clear I had a burning desire and a passion for others, out of a place of feeling stuck and lonely to a place of connection and feeling seen and heard.
Amazing.
Those were, I would say, the three most important and stand out
Yes.
things for me becoming what I now do. Yeah.
It's amazing actually, because I don't think all of us realize how personal wellness affects our ability to be happy in relationships and to find the
Absolutely.
joy and the sort of everything. It's such a cornerstone.
Absolutely, 100%. And we are all in some way going through something that in our day-to-day lives, it may not even be happening to us, but in our subconscious, there sits this thing that is going on that you don't even realize is affecting your life, on a day-to-day basis, how you're showing up for your family, the emotions that you feel towards something, but that you are like keeping inside and holding buried there, that you can't really, let's say something upsets you terribly and you actually need to have a really good cry. Sometimes that emotion actually turns to anger, and something in your own life or your family happens, or an experience or something happens in front of you, and anger comes out instead of a
Absolutely.
sadness.
Yes,
And that then creates an environment in your home that sadly that thing that's happening to you has now filtered into your home when it's actually not even happening to you.
yes,
So that was a huge awareness that I realized was
absolutely.
happening to me, and I needed to stop it immediately. Yeah. So it was the journey of that. Yeah.
Tell us why you think relationships are a crucial part of wellness. Well, we've pretty much discussed that. You can feel free to unpack all aspects of wellness. So we've basically touched on that right now.
Yes. So this is a big one for me and really important, and it's been a part of my life for almost 20 years. Wellness started for me from the tender age of 17, 18, and I got into working with women and doing I actually started my own Kalinetics studio in Johannesburg. I ran my own practice there, and that was where I actually started the journey of wellness of women. And what I realized is I was running a studio of women to come and do exercise, but what I quickly realized is that women needed to feel seen and heard, and they needed a space where they could feel safe and comfortable to share whatever was on their heart, whether it was just a little hug or just a sentence or are you okay, a reading of the room, and that was sort of where the wellness side of things started for me, and then it just sort of progressed and carried on from there. But for me, I would say the most important thing, I believe that we are wired for connection. So as human beings, yeah, we are wired for connection, especially women. Connection gives us a feeling of safety, belonging, and feeling loved, and giving us meaning. When women feel emotionally secure and seen in a relationship, whether it's romantic or with a family member, in a friendship, it nurtures her nervous system, reduces stress, and boosts her overall well-being. Disconnection, on the other hand, is one of the most common roots of anxiety, depression, and burnout in women. And I do believe that when we feel disconnected from
Yes,
humans, from people, whether it's family, our partner, our children, this creates that sense of tension in a woman's body.
absolutely.
Yeah, so that for me is probably the most important part of wellness is our connection to others. My relationships, or my relation, teaching the value, or teaching women to value and nurturing and advocating for themselves from the inside is their own reflection or reflection of them from the inside on their own relationships is a powerful wellness practice, because how she relates to others often reveals how a woman relates to herself. So for me,
Absolutely.
that's also very crucial. And I mean, later on, we'll talk about energy, but, often when we are dealing with things in our relationships, it does affect our wellness because it affects how we feel inside, and how we see ourselves is then also how we show up for others. So that also is really important. Love and emotional safety are like medicine. Our bodies respond when we feel safe, supported, and loved. Our cortisol, which is our stress hormone, tends to drop. These are all things as well that have literally happened to me. So I have firsthand experience on this, and I have been someone who has worked on I've gone for my bloods, I've checked my hormone levels, and I've gotten to the point where I now actually can tell, based on my wellness and my emotional state, where my hormone imbalances are because of what's happening in my life around me. So when I speak
Absolutely.
these
Yeah.
speak of these things, it's a real proper, it's something that I think women tend to overlook, but the answers are right in front of you,
I think you
there.
don't realize the impact. Like, you know what happened to me a few months ago, but that you don't understand the impact that stress and that kind of environmental negative impact can have on your body. And it's because it's affecting your mind, it's affecting your emotions, comes out in your body. And if you leave it long enough, it will manifest in not so great ways.
And it really, our emotions and our relationships do eventually have a direct impact on our health and what happens to our hormones. And I think if more women knew that, so much more would make sense to her about the way she's feeling. Like us, if your cortisol levels are high, that means your stress is too much. Oxytocin, which is our love hormone, when things are good, our relationships are good, and we've created those environments, around us, our oxytocin actually rises, and we actually feel better based on the relationships that we're choosing to keep and nurture. Um, our sleep deepens and improves literally by the wellness of our relationships. Our self-esteem also strengthens, which for me is such a big one, right? That if you're feeling confident in the relationships that you have, and the ones that you're working on in your immediate sort of surroundings, you go out into the world a different person. You really do. And
Your
my husband
outlook
is
is
actually,
different.
yeah, your outlook is different, and the way you approach people, the energy you give off. My husband has actually said to me on many different occasions, the relationship that him and I have changes the man that he is when he walks out into the world. And it honestly, like, it resonates so deeply with me because I feel the same, really, really do. And whether that be a relationship with a partner, a husband, a friend, whomever you have close to you, that nurturing of that relationship, that working on self wellness as a whole, actually impacts it. It has this beautiful ripple effect. So that's important. And then the other thing that's important for me to mention is women lose themselves in the roles that we play in our lives. And this was a big one for me when I did my course with Peter King, discovering all the hats that I was wearing and the roles that I had been playing in my life. As a wife, as a mother, as a caregiver, as a boss, a friend, we are often conditioned to pour into others, often at the expense of our own wellness. And relationships, especially romantic ones, can be a source of nourishment or depletion. That's the truth of it, right? As women, reclaiming our voice and our needs, desires, and boundaries inside a relationship is a wellness revolution in itself, is what I believe.
Absolutely love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so
I
true.
think that's an important piece, really, and I've actually highlighted that in my book here, is that a relationship is a wellness revolution in itself. And I really strongly believe that, because the relationships we keep are an extension of how we feel and then how we show up in the world. And eventually, like we were saying, with time, you're either are feeling good or not. And then by the time you feel, let's say by the time you don't feel good, and there's something happening within your body, there's this big question mark, but you're so far removed from the fact that it could actually be a relationship in your life that's causing you to feel that way, you know?
To
So,
work all of
yeah.
that out.
100%, 100%. So if we were more aware of that, I think you could probably get down to the root cause of why you're feeling that way a lot quicker.
Exactly. And you'd be able to prep for that. Like, this is what I need to stay away from, this is what I need to work on.
Yes,
Exactly.
which is where, yeah, where we're going now. Yeah. I'll be
Okay,
talking on that in a bit.
so you posted something really interesting the other day about women feel emotionally and physically safe and the amount of energy that that requires. That was really thought-provoking for me because I hadn't thought about that, I think, since my 20s, because these are a very, very up and down, uncomfortable, emotional roller coaster because you are not equipped and you're
Yes.
learning and you're often in situations that perhaps are not fantastic because you're still learning which people to avoid, which ones to be, you're finding your way. And yeah, that really took me back, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is something to think about and just ponder a bit.
I absolutely love that you've said that, because when I do my posts, that is always the purpose of them is to evoke a thought, and just plant a little seed, and it's so wonderful to hear that is what it's doing. So that makes me really happy. So for me, on this, very importantly, for a woman to feel emotionally and physically safe within herself and her relationships, I believe that there are certain things that we can do, obviously, to achieve that. So the first thing that I have here is to express herself and her feelings freely. So this is a big one for me, and it has become so prominent in my own relationship, how I am able to express joy, express anger, express sadness, fear, especially, without feeling judged, without being shut down or dismissed by my partner or whomever it is that I choose to share these feelings with. And I think that is so important for a woman, especially because, like I said earlier, we carry around big, heavy feelings. We really do, on a lot of different topics. And if you're unable to express yourself, it means that you're then holding this all together. And again, it's got nowhere to go. If you don't have any other tools or any other method or ways of moving it through your body, it's there, it's stuck. Expression is so important to feel safe to do so. For a woman, or personally for me, to be vulnerable, without fear of manipulation or rejection, so that she knows that her boundaries will be respected and her boundaries are not negotiated or ignored by the person that I'm setting them with. That's also incredibly important, because as women, to set boundaries and feel safe to do so, knowing that the person is not going to shut you down or try and manipulate you into thinking something else. Also, so important. Okay. For a woman to feel validated. So validation, feeling seen and not misunderstood, requires, obviously, the person on the receiving end to be open and again, like we said earlier, to be able to just sit and listen, not actually have to fix anything, but just listen to
Sounding
the
board.
woman. That's it. Be a sounding board, which obviously is what I do. But in your relationships, with whomever it is that you have that with, to feel safe enough to share, and then have that person, even if it's just the person sitting across from you nodding. And it doesn't have to be an agreement. It doesn't have to even be a conversation. It's just, I hear you. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's so important. And then, in relationships also, I believe we need to have a certain amount of trust that in conflict, and what in conflict, which is going to come up, between whomever that may be with, that that the conflict doesn't lead to disconnection or emotional abandonment.
Yes.
So it's basically that your truth is welcomed, and whatever you're saying, the person is not going to now turn their back on you
You're
and walk
shutting.
away and shut you down. So that's so basically what I'm trying to say is that, as the more a woman can just be herself, the easiest way for her to move emotions through her body, feelings, big, all these thoughts that are going through, if she has a soundboard that really is not going to try and fix anything but just listen, you feel so much freer to be yourself. You don't have this one thing building up on the next and on the next, and then because that's what happens, and I mean, we know that on top of that, on top one thing on top of another, eventually an explosion happens. So
Absolutely.
the physical safety, yeah, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I don't think people realize we've got all these things that are kind of building in us as it is, our immediate environment. And then you've got things like social media and the news, these external factors, and they are extremely stressful. If it's to do with women's safety or child abductions or whatever the case is, you're living,
Yes,
especially in South Africa, I think we are dealing with a lot of that and we don't even realize it. It's just become part of who we are. So
totally.
you're constantly feeling under strife. And if you're not working through all of this, it's sitting and it can eventually make you really sick. This chronic
Absolutely.
anxiety and stress.
Worry. Yeah. Literally, you worry yourself into
You
sickness.
worry yourself sick, literally.
You literally do. And I mean, that is a saying, and it couldn't be more true. As women, we do. We worry about our children. We worry about our partners. We worry about ourselves. And there is so much reason, obviously, to be worried.
Exactly.
um, if we can just express our concerns and be validated, it really does have a positive effect on that, because it can turn from a worry and a question mark and a wondering to, okay, I've got this out. Someone agrees with me. Someone has
You've got the
validated the fact this. Yes, yes. And
tools.
then
And
obviously
you,
to work on the tools in order to then start working on a different thought process is
yes,
where
to
we're going
practice.
next.
Exactly.
Practice, that's that. Exactly.
And you won't believe it, but it actually leads to the next question. Such a weird. It's
Yeah.
so funny. Living in a country with such high domestic violence stats, exactly what we were talking
Yes.
about. What are your thoughts
Yes.
about our society and what do you think needs to shift in order to challenge and correct this? I've called it a plague because, quite honestly, I know I'm going to sound dramatic and whatever, but it's something that is really, really bad and it's not going away. No one seems to be doing anything about it. And
Yes.
yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on all of this?
Okay, so yeah, so it's a very obviously complex question, and there's so much to it. Interestingly, so what it brought about for me, just the idea of this topic and this question. First and foremost, I felt the need to have a discussion with my daughter, and empower her with knowledge, and also just to get her comfortable talking about things like this from a young age, because I think, so what I'd like to get out first, this is a courageous and important conversation. This is a social, cultural, energetic, and systematic wound that impacts individuals, families, communities, and generations. From what I feel, I believe we need to start by naming it, by giving it a name, and being open to the discussion. So violence thrives in silence and shame, I think. And with that being said, the first thing that I would think would be important is to in shifting it, is creating a space where women can speak the unspeakable. So making sure that women are aware that there are people out there, human beings, whether it's women, communities, groups, one-on-one, the way I do, just that there is support. There is support for you to share your story fully without shame and no judgment. And I have clients that are experiencing this. And the biggest thing for me is that, again, like I say, when a client comes and this is their story, the most important part is that they can tell it in its truest, messiest form and feel safe. Feel safe. And it gives me goosebumps talking about it, because I can't tell you the massive impact it has on that person immediately when I just sit and I listen to the story and they feel safe telling their truth, getting it out of their bodies, out of their minds, and onto another platform that they don't have to carry the burden alone. So speaking up and becoming okay with this topic is for me the most crucial part, knowing that women have a safe place to share their story. is what's important, to feel safe and not judged and speak their truth. To me, shifting the cultural conditions, we need to also teach emotional intelligence from a young age, by sharing the truth, sharing stories so that women and girls can actually hear a story and feel it in their bodies. So that by creating an emotion around something, that as they grow up, there actually is a conscious of, of what it actually feels like, and an emotional intelligence about these things that are real. So that's important. And then consent and healthy skills, healthy relationship skills that also can be taught from a young age, is also something that I believe can be shared with. And I mean, this is also something that I have thought about doing, is going into schools to be able to actually do talks to young, obviously, kids that are of the appropriate age, but going in to talk to young girls and boys about the reality of sharing
I
what
think
they're going through.
you really should do that, because I think you've hit on two huge things. The one is that the previous generations were taught to keep quiet and just, this is part of it, get on with it, and emotions don't come into it. You just deal with it, which is so wrong. And sort of teaching this to a younger generation will help eradicate this mindset. And the other thing
Yes.
is, culturally,
Yes.
unfortunately, there's a lot of cultures that support really bad treatment of women. A lot of cultures stand by and almost encourage it in a certain way, or allow it, or are complicit in it. And
Yes.
I think by reaching children or young people, you kind of awaken them to a different way,
Absolutely.
give them a
Absolutely.
choice,
And it's
really.
so it's a case of, so we, which I'll get to, and I actually did put this here as well, and which I'll get to, is the man or woman, let's say, that is abusive now. That is one thing that needs to be worked on. But for me, which definitely can be. But the other thing for me is that we have an up and coming generation that are living in homes where they are seeing certain things, and then it really is a case of shifting their subconscious into the idea that there is another way. There
There
is
is
another way
another,
of being, and that child grows up with the notion that it doesn't have to look like this for me, and it doesn't have to look like this in my family one day. And I believe that then changing it from that, or trying to work on it from that perspective, could potentially filter and change it, in the years to come.
exactly.
So yeah, and what I have said here as well, unlearning and normalizing of control, jealousy, and possessiveness in relationships. So often this is also what young children see in their mothers, fathers, relationships that are displayed in front of them. And then that latches onto them, and it becomes who they are, or what they think it
It's a
needs
learned
to.
behavior that's not necessarily true to themselves.
Absolutely, 100%. And it gets like attached to them as an energy or as a thing. And then they get to the relationships, their teenage relationships, their relationships in their 20s, like you were speaking about. And then you are in this relationship. There are things happening within it that you feel in your heart and your gut are not what you would like it to
Yeah,
be and feel like, but you actually don't know any different. You don't know that there is a different way. So I think that that's so important. And giving anyone, a woman or anyone, because I don't want to say just women, but hope that there's somewhere to go and someone will listen, that will create a support system for you and give you tools to improve on your way of thinking, your way of being. And then I also have said here, I believe in collectively raising the frequency of what's acceptable for women in relationships by teaching and practicing radical self-worth, self-trust, normalizing boundary setting, cultivating environments where women feel safe to leave if a situation doesn't feel right to them, and where leaving is celebrated as an act of self-love, not failure. As though, if you feel that a relationship, and whether it's abusive or it's not, if it doesn't feel right, if there's a circumstance that you find yourself in and you really feel like you've tried, it's okay. It's okay if you choose
It's not a
self.
failure. Yeah.
It's not a failure. It
No,
really should not be seen that way.
no,
It's
not at all.
really a powerful act of self-love, like for me personally. And then the last point I wanted to make on it was holding women accountable and inviting them into the healing space. The person abusing can transform through healing. It will require the utmost truth of why it started and a radical inner awakening that can bring on real change and a belief that you can transform and break certain cycles. So I think that that's also an important piece, whether it is on whatever side, that they know that there are ways of healing that, you know, that way of being, and that there is support in it. So, yeah.
Okay, let's take a bit of a step back and chat about energy. We were talking about this earlier, actually, about the way that you and I met, and your energy. That is, to me, it's very strong, and it's instantly recognizable. You just have this extremely warm, energetic, and lovely aura. And I felt like I'd known you for ages. It was such an instant spark. And I just wanted to explore how you think energy fits into the wellness spectrum, because obviously it clearly does. And yeah, what are your thoughts about that?
Okay, so first and foremost, I'd like to say thank you for feeling my energy. And yeah, I always honestly feel like that's one of the biggest compliments that I can receive, because it is something that I really do work on, and for myself. And I believe whatever you're working on, the reward, comes. And so for somebody to feel your energy in an impactful and positive way shows that the work that I'm doing is happening, and shines through. So thank you for sharing that, firstly. To me, I believe the more we work on ourselves and take responsibility and accountability for ourselves, the more our energy starts to shift from a place of, let's say, in myself or anyone else, a place of resentment, anxieties, imbalance, and immunity deficiency, to a place of light, joy, and loving energy. But this requires a lot of work on ourselves, taking a deeper look within. Getting deeply honest is one of the first things that potentially can have a huge effect on your energy. When this happens, our truest, most authentic self starts to appear, and that energy is magnetic. And I feel without, and with that, when you encounter someone and your energy is of a place of light, that person feels it immediately.
Absolutely.
I put here that actually a beautiful thing that I read and go back to often is that our energy is wellness at a cellular level. So
Yeah,
yeah, and that is an
that's
important
lovely.
piece with regards to energy and wellness, because on a cellular level, our body knows what as we've heard, the things we say to ourselves, the words we use to describe ourselves, how we not only interact with the world around us, but our internal world and how we speak to ourselves actually has such a massive impact on us on a cellular level, and it actually has the ability to change our energy. So for me, this was quite a big turning point, I would say, when I experienced adult acne in my 30s. And just an example I can give you of how this really shifted and changed my energy, and on a cellular level, how I spoke to myself really began to change my energy. And what I realized was, and I'll just give you a little visual, is I would wake up in the morning and I would have this face full of adult acne. And what I realized is I would go to the mirror and I'd look in the mirror and I would see this and I would speak to myself negatively. I would say, not another one, or look how terrible this looks, or oh my gosh, I've got to get rid of that quickly. And I'd actually I would damage myself, not only with the words that I use, but also physically And one day, it was through obviously energy work and practice, lots of practice, I decided the narrative needs to change. And I will no longer wake up in the morning and talk to myself in that way. And I will speak to myself as though I'm the most beautiful person. And I will say, look how beautifully your skin is improving. Look how, with a good night's sleep and the right nourishment and whatever it may be, I would start to just give myself the love that I clearly needed instead of the harsh, and that's just an example of how working on your energy and working on the way in which you treat yourself on a cellular level, things actually begin to change. And obviously it was a long journey, but that was such a, and this piece, our energy is wellness at a cellular level. That was for me, that in motion, literally that in motion. It's something quite close to my heart. Our energy unknowingly shapes our encounters and our relationships. It affects how others respond to you. I naturally am an open, warm, calm, and grounded person. And this invites people to be in my energy, to feel safe and to be themselves freely. And I think that's such an important piece. The more we can get truthful with ourselves, the more we can clear our energy up, the more that is then what's given off, and the people around you feed off that. And then it is slowly what they feel free to be as well. So that's also an important piece. And then the last bit I'd like to say, energy is the language your wellness speaks without words. So that's also,
Absolutely.
yes, also so
For
important.
non-verbal communication. Yep.
We started our conversation off like that this morning, and it's really a real thing. It's a real thing that the energy you give off is something that speaks without even having to say a word. Somebody feels, and it can be a good thing. You can be having a really good, calm, grounded day, and then that's the energy that you give off, or you could be having a completely chaotic and
Yeah.
stressful day, and then that's the energy you give off. So it also doesn't matter what it is, as long as you're being true to yourself, right? Managing your energy is a wellness practice, and it requires effort. Who you surround yourself with is probably one of the biggest ones, and really important. What environments you enter. Energy is picked up in an environment within seconds. Your body can feel if an environment and the people
Very
in
quick.
it
You're so
are
right. It's instant.
very,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's instant. And as a woman, our intuition, it's like an immediate yes or no. And
Yeah.
often we ignore that. We ignore that physical and intuitive feeling that comes up. We actually ignore it. And then we stay around people or environments that actually make us feel super uncomfortable, which then changes our energy. And
Yes.
we go into the rest of our day or into our homes, and we take that with us. So
Absolutely.
it's really an important piece for me to share how this can impact you as a person and the relationships that you have, how you protect and replenish your energy. So this was a very big one for me going into coaching, because something that I wasn't aware of before I became a coach and started really working on myself was that you go and you meet a friend for a coffee, and the conversation that the two of you have is one that is impactful, and it is, let's say, it sets off stress and empathy within you. And you then have this feeling, and you finish your coffee, you leave, and you go out into the rest of your day, and you feel like there's something that's not right. Like, you don't know that if you look down at your own 2 feet, you are fine, but there's something that feels off. There's something that doesn't feel, yeah, that doesn't feel right. And you know that something in your body is, and what I discovered is that a lot of the time, it actually wasn't my own energy that was,
Absorbing. Yeah. Someone
I was,
else.
yes, I was absorbing someone else's, and I had to get really good at practical and
There's
vision.
actually a terminology for it. It's plugging your holes in your energy so that no one else's stuff starts seeping in. There's
Yes,
some kind of a phrase about that, but like, yes, a self-protection barrier.
absolutely, absolutely. if, let's say, your boundary at the time of this conversation or this encounter was happening, if your boundaries weren't 100% clear or up or strong, let's say, there are ways of actually clearing it afterwards. Getting intentional about letting it go, knowing and knowing that it's not yours to hold, that you don't have to feel a certain way based on something that someone has shared with you. And it's no one's fault. It's just having the correct awareness and tools to be able to then uh, sort of release that energy and then build your own up again. So that for me is also that's been a crucial part of my coaching, because I do take on a lot of energies and stories, and so it was but what I also realized about myself in the process was that was something I needed to learn, that I was just so open and such an empath. And
Yeah. And so
exactly.
we absorb. It's hard. It's a practice. It's an actual practice that you need to implement all the time. And it starts, as you said, with self-awareness and the tools. And if you keep implementing, it gets a bit, but you're always going to be a little bit vulnerable towards that. Help
Absolutely.
it.
No,
You are.
as humans we are, and that is also okay. That is it
Yes,
is
it's okay.
okay. But it's like when a light bulb goes off in the middle of the day, you're feeling a bit off, and you're like, I don't know why. And if you've heard a conversation like this, you can say, you know what, I know why. I actually
Yeah.
know why,
Your
and I have the
heaviness is
ability
from this other thing.
I have the ability to put this down, to literally take it off me and put it down and say, I don't need to carry this for so and so. Or, I was there for them in that moment, but now I move on.
Yes.
So, very important piece about energy and wellness.
Okay, perfect. So now we are running out of time, and I sent you a million questions. So I think we are going to jump to
Yes.
um, 10. So we'll go through these quite quickly. So we'll start from
Okay.
10. So you are clearly an advocate for self-care. I think I picked that up quite quickly. Tell us a bit
Yes.
about what this looks like for you, like your personal self-care, how you do this. Maybe give us some tips on how we can implement this easily into our lives, especially to people like moms or people that are traveling all the time for work, or who don't have as much freedom of time and space.
So, in a nutshell, self-care for me is I would say the top thing what I have learned over the years, and I've tried almost everything, is creating or setting aside time in my day to be on my own. To what I've realized, and I think this is something that most women crave, is that we crave time by ourselves. And it doesn't mean it actually is such a good thing. It doesn't have to mean that we don't want to see anyone, or it's an act and a form of self-care to have time by ourselves, to actually open space in our minds, to have time and space to think clearly without having someone else to look after, or a thing to do for someone else. So carving out time to be alone is, I think, really important.
And there
This
shouldn't be
can
guilt
be.
around that. There should be no guilt. Moms, especially, have a huge guilt with this.
Oh my goodness. But if you think about it, we are giving time, and a lot of it, to everybody else. And yet we find it difficult to carve out even just 5 to 10 minutes of
Yeah.
time on our own for ourselves. So if you think about it, in a whole day, let's say, you go out into your world for 8 to 10 hours, or you're busy for 8 to 10 hours in a day, to carve out 10 minutes for yourself, I would think there should be no guilt attached to that. Absolutely none, because we're carving our time much more than that for everybody else. So we should be the top priority, and if only 10 minutes is what you can achieve without feeling guilt, just take that and use it to breathe, to clear your mind, to pour yourself a cup of tea. These days people talk about running a bubble bath or doing a yoga. Sometimes that's actually requires too much energy for the woman that is experiencing feelings of, I feel too torn in a million directions. It can literally just be stepping out of your environment, pouring yourself a cup of tea and sitting quietly somewhere where there is silence and just that time for you. So in a nutshell, I would say that that's probably, and depending on the woman and the time and how her life looks, I would say that that's the most important part. If you have more time, book a yoga class, do some sort of, I mean, our options are endless in this time, yes, of things to do. But I would say that that for me has really shifted my self-love and my self-care is carving out that time for me.
Perfect. Okay, so the next question, we can also see that you're an avid supporter of movement and breathing techniques to regulate your nervous system and obviously to come within, which is extremely important in kind of regulating everything inside.
Yeah.
Besides obviously the physical and mental benefits. So tell us how this practice impacts on relationships.
Okay, so I would say most importantly, and what I'd like to speak on first and foremost is how breath work has changed my life. So breath work is something that's sort of really now up and coming, and people are talking a lot on it, but a lot of people don't know the actual benefits of this. So I would say about 4 years ago, I experienced quite a life-changing breathwork experience where I actually had the opportunity and was open enough to remove so much wound that I was carrying
Yeah,
just by breath work. So the first thing was obviously putting myself and being brave enough to put myself in the environment of saying, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it and I'm going to do it properly. And I'm going to go through the experience and get the full impact of it. And it honestly was life changing. So to do it properly, to experience breath work in a sense where you carve out the time, you go with and you set an intention and you work on it in a really impactful way, that for me was super important for women to realize that you actually don't need to necessarily be doing movement, or if you don't have the capacity or the energy, or being in classes with lots of people sort of makes you feel like, I'm not sure if I'm ready for that, or because movement and things is wonderful, but it can be intimidating for some people, so in other words, and movement has been a crucial part of my wellness and my relationships throughout my entire relationship, literally from the age of 17 all the way through. Movement has always been a way of moving emotion through my body. Movement, breath
exactly.
work,
Yes.
and actually just knowing that I can put myself in a place where when I move my body, it honestly has an impact on the way I feel. And if it has an impact on the way I feel, when I then interact in my relationships, I am then a different person. So moving has the ability to do that. Movement, breath work, and it honestly,
Very
it
powerful.
does, it really is a powerful tool to shift things within you and change the way you feel and the way you show up.
Also, your perspective. I find that I can go into something feeling very angry and furious, quite
Yes.
inflamed, literally. I'm sure it's
Yes.
causing inflammation inside as well. But once I've exercised and I've done something, and I've removed myself because I'm now focusing on the movement and whatever, once I leave, it's gone. It's done, finished, and my perspective has changed. I actually can move on with the day and it's all
Yeah.
done and,
You
sorted
don't
out.
have, you've replaced things like anger, resentment. I need to share my view on whatever it is in a strong way. It goes from that feeling to actually,
It's not that
I don't
important.
I don't even know if that matters to me, really.
Exactly.
And you can then come from a place of anger to I'm okay with however this outcome is,
Yeah,
and I'm calm. I'm calmer now than I was before because it really has an impact on your nervous system.
exactly. Okay,
Yeah,
so the last
regulating it.
is if anyone wants to get hold of you, they want to do your course, they want to chat to you for a few sessions, what is the best way to get hold of you?
Okay, so the most important thing is that I am on Instagram. So I have a Instagram page, and I do put a lot out on there as much as I possibly can, sharing my views and provoking thought on my feelings and my views towards things, especially on relationships. You can find me on Instagram, and please come and find me there and just drop me a message, send me something, and I can get hold of you. I am on there most of the time. The other way of connecting with me is through my cell phone, and we can either do a call, or I'm connected on WhatsApp. I can even give you my number now if need be. And I'm in the process of designing and creating a web page, which will be ready soon. So that's also very exciting. So just please just get in touch and feel free to ask any questions. I have a little link that I can send you on my packages, on my pricing, and I can send that to you via WhatsApp or Instagram. What I'd also like to mention is here as well is I'd be happy to do a free 50-minute session with anybody who is interested in trying, with no strings attached and no obligation to carry on, just to get an idea, feel for me and feel for you, so that you can understand what type of coaching I do. And yeah,
There was
yeah, if
something
you'd like.
else you mentioned earlier about something coming up.
Yes, so I'm also it's like whew, in the very early birthing stages, I would say, of a program that I am working on called Coming Home to Her. And this is something that I feel is truly close to my heart, because it's come from a place of actual experience and where I was, and then going through the last 10 years and, getting the help, receiving, and or being open to receive, actually having the correct tools in my life to make change and to get from where I was to where I am now. And Coming Home to Her is going to be a beautiful way of women to be able to experience that in a
Perfect. Yes.
systematic way. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was so lovely speaking to you, and hopefully we can do another session soon.
I can't wait. That would be so lovely. Thanks so much, Kat, for having me.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.